Who was banned from Princess Leonor's wedding? The guest list shocker. Everyone expects a royal wedding to be a spectacle of unity. Glittering gowns, dignitaries from across the globe, and a guest list that reads like a history book. Royal weddings are supposed to symbolize love, tradition, and harmony. That is what the world thought would unfold at Princess Leonor's wedding. But here's the shocker. Not everyone received an invitation. Some names that should have been obvious were deliberately left off the list. And some guests, once close to the Spanish crown, were quietly banned. Because behind the beauty of the ceremony lies a story of power, betrayal, and choices that reveal far more than the palace intended. The question is not simply who attended, but who was forbidden, and why. The story begins with Princess Leonor herself. Spain's future queen, the heir to King Felipe VI and Queen Letizia, she represents a new era for the monarchy. Her marriage, beyond being a love story, is a carefully orchestrated event with deep political, cultural, and symbolic meaning. Every detail matters: the dress, the location, the ceremony, and yes, the guest list. And in a royal world where every handshake and smile carries meaning, an empty chair can be louder than 1,000 cheers. So who was excluded? And what does it reveal about the hidden tensions inside Europe's most watched royal families? The first set of banned figures. Disgraced royals. Every monarchy has its scandals, and Spain is no exception. Former King Juan Carlos, Leonor's grandfather, is one of the most controversial figures in modern royal history. Once celebrated as the monarch who helped guide Spain into democracy, he later became mired in financial scandals, secret investigations, and personal controversies that forced him into exile in Abu Dhabi. For many Spaniards, his presence at Leonor's wedding would have been a painful reminder of the monarchy's most embarrassing chapter. But banning a former king from his granddaughter's wedding? That decision sends shockwaves. The palace framed it as an effort to protect Leonor's moment, to keep the focus on the future rather than the past. But in truth, it was also a signal: Spain's monarchy cannot afford the shadow of Juan Carlos hanging over its brightest star. But the exclusions don't stop there. Foreign royals and dignitaries were also carefully filtered. At first, the world assumed every crown in Europe would be represented. After all, Leonor's future is tied closely to her continental counterparts. Yet the palace chose restraint. Some Scandinavian royals, once rumored to be potential suitors or rivals in the complicated chessboard of dynastic marriages, were notably absent. Speculation erupted around whether this was done to prevent awkward headlines, particularly around Denmark's Prince Christian, whose name has long been linked to Leonor. If the palace truly wants Leonor's marriage to symbolize independence and authenticity, then excluding those who might overshadow her narrative is a calculated move. But it also risks creating tension among royal families who view invitations as both personal honor and political recognition. Then there are politicians. Weddings of monarchs often bring together the most powerful leaders of the era. But Leonor's wedding is different. Spain's monarchy today sits in a fragile position. Debates about its relevance, its legitimacy, and its connection to ordinary people have grown louder. By excluding certain political figures, those critical of the crown or those embroiled in scandals, the palace drew a line. The message was clear: Leonor's wedding is not a platform for political games. Yet this exclusion also sparks controversy. Some see it as the monarchy retreating into its bubble, unwilling to face uncomfortable realities. And then comes the most painful exclusion of all: friends and family from Queen Letizia's side. Letizia, Leonor's mother, entered royalty not from noble birth but as a journalist. Her rise was romantic and symbolic of a modern Spain, but it also drew criticism from traditionalists. Over the years, rumors of rifts between Letizia and extended relatives have surfaced. At the wedding, some of these tensions became visible in the empty seats. To the public, these may seem like private family dramas. But in a royal setting, private choices become public statements. When certain family members are quietly excluded, it tells the world exactly who is in favor, and who is not. At this point, the questions multiply. If Leonor's grandfather was too scandalous, what does that mean for Spain's relationship with its own history? If foreign royals were carefully chosen, what alliances are the palace prioritizing? And if family members were banned, what does this reveal about the private struggles of Spain's most famous household? Each answer only opens the door to another curiosity loop. Because every exclusion points to a larger truth, Leonor's wedding is not just about love, it is about the survival of a monarchy under pressure. But let's pause here and consider the emotional weight of these decisions. For Leonor herself, this is not just a political exercise. This is her wedding day. A day she may have dreamed about since she was a girl. And on that day, she had to accept that certain loved ones, certain familiar faces, would not be there. Imagine the mixture of joy and sorrow as she walked down the aisle. The world cheering, cameras flashing, history being made. And yet, in the back of her mind, the quiet knowledge that some chairs were left empty by choice. That her happiness came at the cost of difficult decisions. It is in that tension, between love and duty, between joy and sacrifice, that Leonor's story becomes more than royal gossip. It becomes profoundly human. And this is why the world cannot stop talking about it. Because the guest list is not a trivial detail, it is the key to understanding what kind of Queen Leonor will become. Will she be the queen who prioritizes the dignity of her crown over sentiment? The queen who says, no matter the blood ties, my duty to Spain comes first. Or will she, in time, find ways to heal the wounds these exclusions exposed? History will judge her not only for the vows she made to her husband, but for the choices she made about who stood by her side. So, who was banned from Princess Leonor's wedding? The answer is not simply names on a list. It is disgraced figures whose shadows threatened the light of the moment. It is rivals whose presence would spark whispers louder than vows. It is politicians whose controversies could stain the purity of a love story. And it is family members whose conflicts proved too deep to resolve on such a day. But the deeper truth, each ban tells us not about who Leonor is shutting out, but about what Spain is trying to protect. A monarchy's survival, a nation's pride, a young queen's future. And perhaps, that is the greatest wedding shocker of them all.